Good evening and welcome. My name is Dr. Gail John and I'm with Neil McEvoy, leader of Propel.
Hi, Gail.
I'm the current PCC candidate for Propel, South Wales Police, and also the author of these two books, Intergenerational Trauma ACEs and Educational Inclusion, Trauma-Informed Education System Strategies and Solutions. I did research from 2012 onwards where I uncovered abusive and systematic abuse towards parents in Wales, where social services were being used as a tool to target parents instead of protecting parents. It appeared that they were safeguarding organisations and inept systems and neglectful systems rather than safeguarding parents and children. So that's how I ended up getting involved in advocating for others in the family court. I was invited as an expert witness, and it is quite shocking, really, about what is going on across Wales. And that's why Propel is advocating for parents and families and wants to change the children's services policy. Neil.
Yeah, hi. I've been involved in children's services. God, I'll tell you what, Gail, it started in 1999, believe it or not. And there was a review of Cardiff Children's Services. A number of whistleblowers came forward saying how bad it was. The managers were saying it was brilliant. And the whistleblowers were sacked, okay? But they were right. And I remember asking probing questions at the time, and it got me thrown off the scrutiny committee. There's a surprise. So really, that kind of stuff started in 1999, but I wouldn't be quiet. I took an interest. By 2009, I was in family court as a Mackenzie friend, helping people. I had my own case in family court, which introduced me to a world that I didn't know existed, really. And through my own experience, I started helping lots of dads, lots of grandmothers as well that weren't seeing their grandchildren. And it was always, my experience was, it was always the grandmother who just would not give up. And what happened then, there was a bit of a transition period, and I started helping lots of mothers as well. And after 2016, when I got elected to the Welsh Parliament, there was a shift again, and most of the cases on my books now are dealing with children's services. And if you'd have told me before I was elected what was happening in children's services, I probably wouldn't have believed you, Gail, to be honest. But it's only through experience of looking at cases, seeing documentation, speaking to parents, making me realise what a dreadful system we have. Every children's services department is in crisis, and I'm sick and tired of seeing report after report after report with false information in. And where we're at now, parents out there will know when a report is written about you and it contains things which are not true, there is virtually nothing you can do about it. And what happens then, in my experience of cases, is that the error or the lie is on top of, is reinforced. So by the time you're much further down the line, what is completely untrue is taken as gospel. And what concerns me is that falsehoods are put before judges. Judges make decisions on bad information. Then we have a whole industry in Wales of taking children into care and adopting children, and we've got to put a stop to it. And that's one of the reasons why I'm involved in politics, is to change things and make things better. And there's a comment there about forced adoptions. Yeah, I mean, it's dreadful. So we all sat down last year, really, talking about policies, what we wanted to bring forward. Gail, you wrote a load of things for children's services, and we boiled it down, and we came up with the policies that we've put in Propel's contract for Wales. Now, Propel is the only political party tackling these issues. A lot of our members are made up of people who've been through family courts, so there's a real passion inside our movement. It's not just a party, it's a movement for change. There's a real passion out there to reform children's services from top to bottom. So, shall I go through our policy, Gail, with
Oh,
the
yes,
contract?
please. Yes,
Okay.
please.
Well, with the contract for Wales, what we want to do is change the law in Wales. Luckily, we have our own parliament, so we're able to do that. But we need to win political power first. That's a key point. But as a policy, number 7, the act, the seventh act, the seventh change of law we want to introduce is called the Children Before Profit Act, and it says what's written on the tin. Really, we want children to be put before profit in Wales. As it stands now, there's a huge industry in children's services, and there's one kid that I'm dealing with who did allege abuse in care, and he is worth £500,000 a year. So basically, he's not leaving care, and my considered opinion is that he shouldn't even be in care. So with our contract with Wales, children's services is one of the massive things that we want to address. We want to outlaw profiteering. We want to take away the profit motive for private companies. I don't think people out there realise that the Labour Party of Wales has privatised children's care, and that are people becoming very, very rich on the back of the misery of families. That are children crying out to come out of care, crying out to go back to their parents, and nobody other than us is listening. We've had minister after minister in the Welsh government who've been just absolutely hopeless. What we want to do is safely reduce the number of children in care, safely reduce the number of children who are adopted. If some children do need to go into care, so those children that do need to be in care, we want to make sure they stay in Wales, because we don't want children sent away, far away from their network, far away from where they grew up. What we want is, I think you're the expert on this, Gail, a trauma-informed approach.
Yes.
And we want early intervention, we want advocacy, so families have people standing up for them. And a big thing that we want also is we want parental alienation recognised by CAFCAS and acted upon. I think that's a key point. It needs to be acted upon. And we also want an inquiry, a full inquiry into what has gone on in children's services for the last 20 years, even, I'd say, since devolution began. And I think one day in the future, many, many parents, many, many children will have an apology off the government for how they've been treated, because the system is absolutely inhumane. It's inhumane.
Mm.
What we want to do as well, because as I said about fraudulent reports?
Yes.
Inaccurate reports, dishonest reports, flawed reports. You take your pick, but they're wrong. They're wrong. And as I said, there is no recourse. There's no solution. As somebody who's been in local government on the council since the first time I was elected was 1999. I think there's only been one case in all that time where they corrected a flawed report, just one time. And so therefore something is clearly not working, because you make all these complaints. The ombudsman is a waste of time. I mean, I've not met one family who's satisfied with what the ombudsman has done. If you go through to the children's services complaint system, again, almost a waste of time. The so-called independent investigator, stage 3, is actually paid for by the council. Whichever council you're complaining about, the council is paying the investigator. So if the investigator's too good, they're not going to be re-employed. So what you have is lip service, lip service to allegations and investigations. So therefore, another solution that Propel has come up with is a Public Services Accountability Act. So what we want there are people being held to account. One thing we want as well within that act is Robbie's Law. Now, Robbie it was a poor lad who died 30 years ago, needlessly. There was medical negligence. To cover up the medical negligence, doctors falsified medical notes. There was a whole huge cover-up. And I met with Will Powell, Robbie's dad, in August last year. And it wasn't until I met Will that I realised that when things go wrong, be that medically, be that with children's services, or whichever public service, the professionals do not have a duty to tell the truth. That really shocked me, because I thought they would obviously tell you the truth, but they don't. Well, not saying they don't generally, but they have no legal obligation to. So with Robbie's case, things were covered up, the family were misled, and they've been fighting for justice ever since. So what we want to bring in is a law called Robbie's Law, where professionals have a duty of candour, we call it. Basically, they've got to tell the truth. And what we also want, and this is the big one, is a public services investigator. Because when lies are told about people, or when errors are made and they're not corrected, we want somebody to be on the side of the small person. Because parents are going through trauma. I can think of a number of parents who have complaints. Their complaints have not been dealt with properly, and they've effectively suffered mental breakdowns because of the trauma of losing children. And so what we want is a big organisation, strong, empowered by law, to stand up for people. I've been doing it all my life in politics. It's got me called a bully, because I stand up to authority on behalf of people who are powerless. I'm lucky to have been in office, to be elected with authority from people. It's temporary, so my term is coming to an end now. I'm officially no longer a member of the Parliament on Wednesday. So I've got a couple of days left. Got a few more letters to write during that time. And so what we want is a public service investigator, and that is an investigator who will investigate children's services, local education authorities, health boards, the police, in an independent way. And they're independent because what we want them to be is elected. So we want to split Wales up into 8 different regions, each one having a capital, actually. But we want Wales split into 8 different regions, and every one of those regions will have a public services investigator who will be elected. And just so we don't get the usual suspects like an Alan Michael police commissioner who's a complete waste of time and part of the establishment, what we're saying is that the investigator must have no contact with party politics for the previous 10 years. So therefore, it takes the usual suspects out of the game. So to recap for everyone listening, Propel is the only party in Wales taking on the issue of children's services, serious about what we want to do, we're serious about change, because so many of us in Propel have been affected personally by that service area. And we want to outlaw profiteering. We want to take away private companies out of the care sector. We want less children taken into care, less children adopted. We want families supported at the front end. We want CAFCAS to recognise and act upon parental alienation. We want a full investigation. And I think we marched from the centre of town late last year to the Senedd, and we had a demonstration outside the Senedd, socially distanced. It was a minimum. It was a maximum of 30, so there were only 30 of us, because those are the rules then. And there were so many people out there with stories. And what I want the inquiry to do is to give a voice to all those people. So all those people, and I use this term advisedly, okay, it's not an accident. All those parents out there who have been abused by children's services departments, emotionally abused, pushed to the edge, damaged unto their children. I want to give all you guys out there a voice. And I want your story, and I want it written down on the public record. So the shameful activity which has been covered up for too many years now is exposed. And as I said, we want the Robbie's Law brought in So professionals have to tell the truth, and we want a public services investigator, because as it stands now, you haven't got a chance. I mean, you hit from pillar to post if you're involved with children's services, and it's such an emotional thing to go through. And you guys out there, you need champions. Wales needs champions. And one of those champions that we want to bring in is a public services investigator. So we've laid out our policies there. I think we've got some questions to answer. We'll try and pick up on comments on the feed. And so, Gail, there were some questions. So do you want to go through
be honest with you, just in the last week, I've been contacted by two men who were at about 2 o'clock in the morning wanted to commit suicide. So what we're standing for is basically suicide prevention, because this is a crisis across Wales. Wales has got the highest statistics. In fact, the numbers of children being removed into care in Wales is more than England and Ireland's numbers combined. That's how serious our problem is. So what we're standing for is suicide prevention. It's well known that male suicide is the leading cause of death across Europe. And I believe that the target in removing the parents and splitting parents and not allowing fathers to see their children, when fathers are going to the police, they're being told to grow a pair, and then because they haven't got a voice, they haven't got a way of expressing themselves, their hands are tied. And I believe that is connected to the male suicide rates that are rising in Wales and across Europe. And also, Wales saw a 45% increase in female suicides. I believe either 2017 or 2018. And if you look at the numbers of children that have been removed into care in Wales, I believe it is directly because of the target in social services onto these families. Now, what has actually come through as well, I mean, I'll be honest with you, first time that I ever came into contact with social services being used as a retaliation tool towards parents was when I was in school as a teacher myself, when a child had complained about a teacher pushing them or physically hitting them, but the child had actually made it up. It was an autistic child. He was an autistic child. And what happened then, I saw that this family then had social services put on them. It was to distract attention from having a complaint being investigated. That was what it was. And that's when I first had my eyes open to it. Then when I actually whistleblew in 2013, in the March, 6 months later, to silence my report, they used social services, inept, unethical social services who wanted me to play guess who wrote an anonymous letter about me. I mean, nothing came of it. However, there are parents out there with dyslexia, with learning difficulties, who've had abuse as children through no fault of their own, and they're having this abuse used against them as tools to traumatize them further. And it is not right. It is not fair. I've sat in a few meetings actually, where I've seen social workers lying. And then when they're called out on their lies, their faces will go bright red. There is no accountability. There is no scrutiny. There's loads of comments here about how they've been targeted. We need to raise up an army, because enough is enough. This is suicide prevention. This is serious. And we're saying enough is enough. That's it.
I agree that loads of comments coming through. Please keep the comments coming through. Please share this page as well. If you're watching, share it, because we want this to go as far and wide as possible. We're on 49 shares right now. There's more than 49 people watching. So please, if you're watching this, click share this broadcast. Somebody asked online why we had no parents on the panel. The reason being, we tried that last week, and people started to mention names last week, and I think it's so emotional for parents involved in these proceedings and in this area that we didn't want to take a chance of having to stop the broadcast again. So we just wanted to try and deal with questions out there and bring it to light, really.
I mean, last week, what happens is, because our parents, the parents that we are helping, or parents who are involved in this, are so traumatized that they cannot help but to just say about their stories. They end up revealing their children's names, and they then put themselves in a safeguarding position. So we want to protect people from harm. That's really...
For me as well, Gail, I know you're standing for the Police and Crime Commissioner against Alan Michael in South Wales, and the police have got a big role to play here as well. I remember the case I got suspended for 4 months, unbelievably. What the BBC didn't report was that to go back, I suppose most people probably don't know the story, but all I did was pick the phone up and inquire about a child's welfare with a care home, because a child was alleged abuse in care, and I know the child had been taken to hospital. So the parents were beside themselves. The kid shouldn't be in care, in my view. He's begging to come out, but he's worth £500,000, so he's staying in care. That's my view on it, anyway. And the person who the child said abused it, I mean, the first allegation was made September 2017, October 2017, November 2017. Something happened in December 2017 as well. And April 2018, he was alleging abuse again, continually. And the police did attend, Gail, and they went to the care home to see how the child was. The child was not spoken to by an expert. He was not taken to a place of safety. He was spoken to on site and told off by the police. They told him off, and the child has never ever changed its story, by the way, never. And what is absolutely disgraceful was that the media did not report that the person who the child alleged is abusing it was the person who started the complaints process about me. Okay, that wasn't reported. Wales Online didn't even report that there was a child involved. They just focused on me being called a bully, and then I had a whole load of abuse off I suppose, the woke kind of people out there, you know, the type, always virtue signaling, anti-racists and all that kind of stuff, always anti-racist, but doesn't want to hear the views of a mixed race person like myself. I just find it so ironic. And
I remember. Yes, sorry.
Sorry, Gail, let me come to the point. I've gone off. Sorry. Point is, the police turned up and they admitted 2 years later they didn't investigate properly. 2 years later. But it's okay, because they investigated then and there was no problem.
I remember going to your ethics committee.
The Police Crime Commissioner of South Wales. Definitely.
Well, what was it? It was January 2020 in Cardiff, because I remember attending that, and they didn't even follow the policy, because the child in care should have had an advocate of their choice, and you were the advocate. I remember talking to the dad, and he was saying that the child was denied a voice. The child was bringing allegations of abuse. You were there to protect the child, and then you were vilified. You were the one who was then brought before an ethics committee, yet the rights of the child abuse, yet again getting covered up. Just like a lot of the comments coming through, there's so many parents that when they are bringing allegations of abuse, just as we found out from the man that came on last week, he said that when his child got removed into care, there was physical abuse. Abuse in care appears to be ignored. And who's speaking up for these children? Neil, you, me. And what happens to us? We end up then being targeted.
Oh, vilified. I mean, BBC News, Wales Online. Ruth Mazalski was particularly bad, actually. She's a journalist with Wales Online. And at no point did she report that a child was involved. And the reason that I was on the phone was to inquire about the welfare of a child. What I find ironic about that at the time was that she was pregnant at the time. And I thought, well, I'm not really sure how any mother or father could completely ignore the voice of the child. Her husband works at the BBC. Kemlin, his name is. He's a journalist as well. And I remember asking him to cover the voice of the child, and he told me that I was the story, basically. But the BBC has a particularly bad history in dealing with the abuse of children. We know that.
Yeah.
But to go back to the point of this, really, is that the reason we're broadcasting this, people, is because there are solutions, and the
Yes.
solutions are found through politics. You need politicians elected who are going to implement policies like Propel's policy, the Children Before Profit Act. It's part of our contract for Wales, and we need you guys out there voting, first of all, because 50% of people don't vote in Welsh elections. I think the turnout for the Police and Crime Commissioner last time was tiny. So the result is the parties with money, like the Labour Party, get their people elected. And you've got Alan Michael, who is a dreadful police commissioner, and just gets in automatically almost. And this time you've got Gail standing. Gail John, you see her? Dr. Gail John, so vote for her. Just name dropping you. Gail John, make sure you vote for her. Everyone out there, on a serious note, we've got to get you elected, Gail. We need people like you in positions of power making decisions, because otherwise you get the same old usual suspects, and you get people out there. Oh, you're all the same. Well, actually, we're not, and I think our track records shows that, because if you look at both Gail and me, our lives have been made particularly difficult for doing the right thing sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, always actually, but we've really stuck our necks out on certain things in relating to protecting children, and we've both had a rough time, haven't we, Gail, because of that?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I was offered 17,000 to keep my mouth shut. That's what tends to happen in Wales. They're not interested in putting your children first. They're not interested in investigating child abuse. They would rather pay people off to keep everything quiet and hush hush. Of course, I mean, I didn't take the 17,000 because then I'd be complicit in this abusive, corrupt system. Regarding the police, on last Wednesday, I attended a police hustings where there were 80 police officers, and they asked us questions. And some of the questions reveals how basically the current system is unfit for purpose. One of the questions that was put forward by the police related to mental health. And what they stated was that they are often the first responders regarding mental health, and their solution is often to put people into a police van. Now, they stated, oh, this isn't really appropriate. What can you do to, what other solutions can you bring? And to which my response was, your question shows how unfit for purpose your current system is. They were also bringing questions. They were quoting the Silk report, which is a report which is 2011. That's 10 years out of date. There's an up-to-date Welsh Justice report, which was published in 2019, which is full of information showing all about there's a massive section about the family services, where Westminster is asking questions about the Welsh Children's Services. Why are we having such large children taken into care? Why isn't the Welsh Children's Services following prevention in a first instance? Why aren't they following early intervention and keeping families together? That is contained in the Justice report. And unfortunately, Welsh professionals are not trauma informed, they're not trauma trained, and they're not putting our children first. And it's got to stop. That's, I mean, if you look at the statistics, the criminal justice, our prison systems, our homelessness rates, is full of children who've been care experience, where if you remove children away from their families, then they're trapped in a cycle of poverty, a cycle of abuse, where there's intergenerational trauma. And we want to keep families together. Children, where fabricated evidence, we've had enough of fabricated evidence being used against families who perhaps bring a complaint of negligence, or who argue with the doctor about maybe breastfeeding, and then there's all this retaliation using social services as a tool against parents. It has to stop.
I mean, I think that I've spoken about this case before. I mean, obviously it's anonymous, but I read the reports. There's 115 paragraphs, and I only got to paragraph 15, and I made a decision there that really the police need to be called in. Before I did that, I gave the local authority an opportunity. It was the Vale of Glamorgan. I gave them an opportunity to correct the errors,
Yeah.
and they didn't. So I went to the police. Police have not been in touch with me since. They've not been in touch with the victim of this crime, and it is a crime. And if the chief constable that we have in South Wales is more interested in politics, as he is actually, in my opinion, and is not really interested in dealing with these kind of matters, then I think, I don't envy you. I don't envy you having to work with that man. Should you be successful, Gail? I think,
It's interesting, Neil, because we've had, as a PCC candidate, I've had a lot of emails from different groups asking me to respond. How, for example, how would I respond to, or what was one of them? Or domestic violence. There's a domestic violence hustings, so they're asking about your opinion in order to inform their voting. Now, I've had one from Vivian Baker, who's she's almost Dr. Vivian Baker. She's doing a PhD on the family services. Now, she sent me an email asking, really, would I, as PCC, consider sacking Jeremy Vaughan? Because, so I've had quite a few, I've had about three of these different, requests. So there appears to be a lot of different groups across the South Wales region who are not happy with the way that South Wales police are conducting themselves, and they're stating breaches in national policing standards. And I suppose as part of the PCC's role, it is really to hold the police to account in order to keep the public safe. So there's quite a few disgruntled people out there, Neil.
Yeah, I've been contacted by police officers actually as well, and there's a lot of discontent in the force. They tell the frontline officers tell me, and I just clarify, these are people I don't actually know personally. So I do know some police officers, but these are people who I don't know personally. They've contacted me off the record and told me that morale in the South Wales Police is at an all-time low, and they're very critical of the senior managers. They're very critical of the Chief Constable Vaughan. I think he should be sacked. I don't think he's fit to be Chief Constable. I've said that in public before, so I'm not saying anything new. So I think if you were elected, you should sack him, to be honest.
Well,
I mean, you look at digress slightly. You look at the Di Morris case. I mean, they're sitting on DNA. They've been sitting on it for years. It's a scandal. Won't go into that. It's a different matter, different topic. But I think to go back to the case I was talking about, it was factually incorrect. They said the child had lost weight. They said, and they blame mother. They said the child was starved. Now, I saw, and they took the child off mother, by the way. And I saw a photograph, time-dated photograph of the child, not starved in any way, shape, or form. Looked very chubby actually, and typical baby. And I looked at the medical record. The baby hadn't lost weight. The baby had gained weight, and that was put to Children's Services. And Children's Services accused mother of what's the word?
Forgery.
Forgery. What was it? Forgery.
Yeah.
And then, but they've not been able to substantiate or support that allegation. And now, lo and behold, the social worker who made the allegation has left the authority.
Yes.
But I'll tell you what, with that case, that allegation is going to follow her to wherever she goes.
Yes.
I'm not letting this one go. And when there are just some, when there are just basic factual inaccuracies, there was a whole load of stuff. As I said, paragraph 15. And all I had to do was look at the evidence, look at the reports, right, that's wrong, because there's the document there. That's wrong, because there's a document there. And what I failed to understand, and I look at the Vale of Glamorgan, especially the councillor in charge, Councillor Ben Gray, what I failed to understand is why that man is unable to do what I did. Why that man, he has political power. Why is he unable to instruct officers to do what I did? Look at the evidence, look at the report, and find the mistakes and rectify them. They'd rather vilify mother, and I think that's you get all these like women's charities, like Quartier, you get Women's Aid as well, and There's just all this talk of misogyny and hatred of women. And for me, the biggest form of misogyny in action that I see are the way that mothers are vilified by children's services. And none of these charities out there to support women do anything about it at all. And you've got some really great mothers who I see devastated by the lies that are told about them. It's time that we did something about it. So what Propel wants to do is, as I said, let's get the contract with Wales in place, Children Before Profit Act, and also the Public Services Accountability Act, two fundamental bits of legislation that we can pass. And what we're saying is we're realistic, we're new. We're not as new as we may sound, actually, because we were, first of all, the Welsh National Party, then Welsh Nation Party. We had to call ourselves Propel in the end. I won't go into that. I've been in politics for 36 years. There's hardly a more experienced politician in Wales in the Assembly. Not many more experienced than me. We've got lots of experienced activists. We've got people with talent. And what we're saying is we've got 31 candidates out of 60 as well. So 31, that's a lot of candidates. And what we're saying is that anybody who wants to deal with us after the election, what they have to do is implement our contract with Wales. And it's fundamental that children's services is dealt with. Fundamental. Otherwise, there won't be any deals. And also, context, last time the government was put in power by one member of the Senate, the Liberal Democrats supported Labour, and really didn't get anything for it other than a ministerial car and a nice salary, to be honest. I'm not sure what difference she actually made. But what we're about in Propel is making a difference. Do you know, there's so many comments coming through, Gail. I'm unable to keep up with them. I'm unable to keep up.
It's incredible.
Please share this, though, because we're up to now, let me have a look, 97 shares, but there's still more than 97 people watching. So if you're watching this, please share. Let's get this broadcast as far and wide as possible.
People are calling for account. They're calling, there's so many people that are saying the same sort of things. There's no accountability. Yeah. And when social workers are caught out lying, you've got Care Council of Wales, they don't want to know. Well, that means then that social worker is allowed then to go and do the same to another person. And with that case that you were referring to, it is clearly a case of retaliation, because there is a doctor that was connected to 5,000, I think it was a scandal regarding 5,000 children who were wrongfully removed. And unfortunately, this mum had the unfortunate experience of disagreeing with him. And then the next day, there was a multidisciplinary meeting where that child was removed. Now then, multidisciplinary, this was after Jeremy Vaughan had stated that he had trained 7 councils in trauma-informed and preventative medicine, preventative working together, trauma-informed prevention, keeping families together, which did not happen in this case. So, I mean, I really, we need to be pushing for accountability where, when there are wrongs that are being put right, that will mean that children need to go back to these parents with apologies.
Also, I think John out there said that it's wider than Cardiff. The one case I'm talking about is the Vale. There are also cases I'm aware of in Rhondda and Taff, in Cardiff, in Monmouthshire,
Swansea Bridgend,
Gwynedd, Powys, Pembrokeshire, Carmarthenshire, Newport. So actually what we're looking at is every authority in Wales, Caerphilly as well, Torfaen, everywhere, absolutely everywhere. And also the same problems exist in England. And what we want to do is use the Welsh Parliament as an example of what to do, how to tackle these issues. But at the end of the day, we can talk all night. Unless we get people to vote for Propel, none of this is going to happen. And for those of you that are cynical out there and say, oh yeah, it's a politician trying to get votes, 100%. I'm a politician trying to get votes. The reason I want votes is so we can bring change. So I want people like Gail, John elected. I want to get elected myself. I want more people elected. And with the community that we have in Propel, like a community of people interested in children's services, we will definitely bring change, because it's not a question of it just being a policy. This is our lives. People in Propel live this every
Yes.
day of their lives, and we want to make things better, and we can. We need you guys out there to vote. We need your friends to vote. We need your neighbours to vote. We need your family to vote. I want everyone. If you like what we're saying out there, I want every single one of you out there to get 10 people to vote for Propel. 10. And I'd invite you as well to join our party, www.propel.wales/join. Join us, and let's be that change in Wales.
Yeah.
Wales needs a revolution. It needs a peaceful revolution, because I mean there is so much wrong, and we can do it. We can do it, but only if you guys help out. Right, we're up to 100 shares now. Let's refresh it. If you're watching this and you haven't shared, please share it, because we want this conversation on children's services to go. 132 shares, fantastic. Jumped again. So thanks for sharing. Thanks for tuning in as well.
I mean, to be honest with you, Neil, the money that the large amount of money that is pushed into, foster carers and into these schools that are, was it one social worker owning about 9 of these money-making organizations. I mean, I personally would want the money to be put into families in the first instance to bring support, because a lot of families, there's perhaps, you have a lot of that. Maybe there's been domestic violence, there's been sort of neurodivergence, such as the people have ended up with child abuse themselves, and we have a nation of people that are suffering. There's a lot of pain in our nation, and we need to be helping and supporting our families with the support that they need. So I personally would want a system where it's a recovery to help and support parents who need the help and support in the first instance, to keep these families together. Because with adverse childhood experiences, as we know, the research tells us that it's costing us in terms of the NHS, in terms of heart disease, in terms of cancer. We need a trauma-informed nation. It's no good just having it on paper. It needs to be in practice. And I believe as well that we can do so much, that we can reverse the poverty, we can reverse the suicide rates, we can basically get people off the streets, and we can actually start becoming a well nation again.
I'd say every time I broadcast about children's services, we get a massive response. At the moment, I'm standing for re-election. I'm unable to take on any more cases until after May the 6th. If I'm not re-elected, then clearly I can't do any more cases anyway. But I'm hoping that we will be re-elected. So if you're gonna message me and ask for help, I'm unable to do it at the moment. I've got to get re-elected. If I don't get re-elected, then all the work we've done stops, basically. And I've been overwhelmed with comments, Gail. We're up to, let me just refresh it now.
I know.
It's amazing. There are just almost 500 comments now from people.
But there are support groups. There are support groups out there, such as I know that you set up Pen with Vivian, and there's Andy as well. Andy is an awesome advocate for children's services. He supports a lot of groups. So please, can you join these groups, get support, because you can't be doing this on your own. You need to be in support, because there's just, it's too painful on your own. Don't get isolated. Join a group, get peer support.
Yeah, we're up to 225 shares now, so thanks. Let's keep those shares going, people. There's almost 178 people watching this right now live. Almost 500 comments. Bit of advice as well for people out there. When you're dealing with children's services, make sure you record everything, okay?
Yes.
You are legally entitled to record, okay? What you're not allowed to do is publish that recording. Because what happens in many cases, some outrageous things are said and then denied, and you have no proof. What I would advise everybody is to record everything you do. And there's a change in policy as well. What they should have is, well, what should happen, Gail, is everything should be recorded. Every
Yes.
meeting. There's no argument then. There's no
Yes.
he said, she said. If everything's recorded, saved on the clouds, totally secure, and that's just a much better way of dealing with things.
Debs has got a good bit of advice as well. Never sign anything, because what tends to happen is that they will try and make you feel that you have to do something now. Now, you can always say, I'll think about it, right? Don't be manipulated. Do not get into a place of fear where you feel that you have to be pushed into a corner to make a decision. You don't have to. You have a choice. You can say, I will think about it. Okay. It'll give you some space and it'll give you a chance to perhaps talk to your partner and to decide what is best for you. Thank you, Debs, for that. There are some amazing people who are in these groups who've got so much, because they've been through it themselves. They know lots and lots of, I don't know, they've got a lot of good advice then, really.
Yeah. Somebody saying there, Gail, that record and tell them you're recording. To be honest, I just record. I mean, it's been most useful for me in my life where I've recorded and they've not known in various things, official things, and then they turn around and denied what has been said and called me a liar, and I've had a recordings or a liar.
That happened in your ethics committee.
Oh God,
yes.
Yeah, I mean, I was getting stitched up by the Standing Ethics Committee again in the Welsh Parliament, and I secretly recorded what they were saying about me. And the Standards Commissioner, who was a High Court judge, he still sits sometimes. He had to resign because I recorded what he was saying. But anyway, that's a different matter.
Thing is, if you hadn't recorded, it could have cost you your job.
Oh, so they wanted rid of me. They wanted to kick me out of the Parliament. And I've no doubt if I hadn't have recorded, they may well have succeeded. They suspended me anyway. But obviously you had to resign. We're up to 246 shares now, people. That's really good. So keep the shares going. Keep the comments coming in as well.
Something that's come through as well, because a lot of the questions, I've just gone through some of the questions that was sent in, and we have addressed quite a few of them. But someone has just written down as well about autism and about Munchausen's or FII, fabricated induced illness. Now, what tends to happen is there seems to be a few different little strategies that appear to be used against parents. One of them is when children appear to be costing the council's money, and that can be during the regarding the educational provision. Say if there are children where they're in education, the education has failed them, there hasn't been early intervention, there's been missed assessments, and the child has struggled in some way, maybe with sort of autistic behaviours, speech and language behaviours that are I mean, all behaviour is communication, and unfortunately you've got professionals, they're not up to date and trained. So what will tend to happen, they've then not recognized that the child has got neurodivergent, perhaps autism, dyslexia or dyspraxia, ADHD, and then a parent will come along and will say, look, I believe my child has got autism. Because it's then costs the money, costs the local authorities money, there tends to be then local authorities going in and doing investigations. Now, then a number of these cases, further down the line, after the child has been removed, then the child then has a diagnosis, because surprise, surprise, the parent who knows their child better than anyone was right. But there's been no apology, and then the goalpost gets changed, and then there's further allegations of they just continue making things up to cover their own backs, really, and we need to have accountability. We need to have a well-trained practitioners. I mean, I'll tell you what's come out as well. During the police hustings, I ended up doing a little bit of research, and I found that I think 16% of police officers have got complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and they're about 60%, according to Cambridge University, about 60% of police officers and probably social workers are not given the time or space to process some of the horrific things they see within their job. Well, you know, we need to be trauma informed. It's not just, you know, for the children and for our practitioners to, you know, we just need to have a kinder nation, a kinder, more compassionate nation, you know, where people aren't covering up because they can't do their jobs. Instead of using the systems to abuse parents and cover up their own failures, we just need social reform.
Yeah, yeah.
Complete.
That's what we want to bring. I think we're up to, in terms of shares, we're doing really well now. So please keep on sharing, everyone out there. We're up to, where are we up to? 253 shares, 566 comments. I think what I'd like to do is just, do we have many more questions to cover, Gail? Or should we draw this to a halt now?
Well, to be honest, there's lots and lots of comments. Everybody seems to be bringing in their stories. I mean, someone did mention about that. Really, then with accountability, there should perhaps then maybe needs to come a point where there's criminal. It needs to be a criminal offence.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
carrying a prison sentence.
Yeah, I think it shouldn't be the frontline social workers either. You know, I think maybe if senior people are sent to prison, then the message will get home, because I do feel sorry for social workers who are in some cases bullied, in some cases, well, not in some cases, in all cases under-resourced. Okay, too much work to do, too much pressure, not enough support, not enough time. I mean, it's a bloody difficult job, and I think people may misunderstand sometimes when I'm complaining about children's services. I'm not always complaining about every social worker, because I employ a social worker. She does amazing work for me, and I respect the profession. But there are bad apples, and they've got to be taken out of the barrel. And the very senior people in children's services all over Wales who are not doing their job at the moment, then I'm sorry. What we need to do is restructure those organisations and get rid of managers who are ineffective. That's my opinion.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I know three social workers who are friends of mine, and all three of them have been bullied within their jobs.
Yeah.
And that's within the South Wales region.
It's endemic. I've spoken to a lot of police officers as well, Gail, who are complaining about bullying in the force from very senior places. Because I think that whichever job you do, when you work on the front line, it's tough. And what you're saying there about the PTSD, the trauma that police officers and social workers go through, they're not given time off, and they should. It's it's not an easy job. But I want to restate Propel's policies, because we have a contract with Wales. We want to radically change children's services. We have a Children Before Profits Act. I'm just going to glance now at it to make sure I don't miss anything. We want to outlaw profiteering. We want to make sure that private companies do not make profit from children in care. We're saying the vulnerable children should not be money-making opportunities as they are now for private companies. All children taken into care need to stay in Wales. We need to safely reduce the number of children in care. We need to safely reduce the number of children who are adopted. We need to give siblings the right to see siblings regularly when they are adopted or put in care. That doesn't happen at the moment. We want a full inquiry, as well, as we said, into the way children's services have been run in Wales, to give people a voice. We want Cafcass Cymru to recognise and act upon parental alienation. As Gail was saying, we want a trauma-informed approach, and we want investment at the front end. So we want families supported and not broken up. It's cheaper. If you just look at the figures, it's cheaper to support families at the front end instead of not supporting them and taking the kids into care. In terms of the enforcement, we want a Public Services Accountability Act, so that we have, first of all, Robbie's Law, as we spoke about earlier, where people have to, or professionals have to tell the truth by law. And we want a Public Services Investigator. For me, it's absolutely fundamental. They have to be elected, so the politicians are not controlling the investigators. We also must make sure that they have had no contact or involvement in party politics for the previous 10 years, so we don't have the usual suspects. And then those public services investigators, 8 around Wales, 1 overall for the whole organisation. Let's start cleaning up the culture of public services in Wales. We need to clean up politics, and we need to clean up the public sector.
Right. You started mentioning about finance. We're having some figures come through here.
Yeah.
Somebody has said that basically £3,000 a week, that's how much social services pay for this lady's daughter to be in her placement. I've got some more figures just here as well.
Yeah.
Now, then, regarding adverse childhood experiences in Wales, it's been estimated to be the equivalent of £2.2 billion a year. That's the cost. That's the cost of trauma, the cost of splitting families, and the cost of, just adverse child experiences. The cost of maintaining children's services is very expensive. Cost of placements cost in the region of £23,000 a year.
Yeah.
And you've got independent foster agencies. They cost equivalent is about £43,000 a year. Residential placements cost about £3,000 up to £9,000 per week. So that lady who just wrote that down, that's what she's been saying about. And a secure accommodation costs around £5,000 per week, and that's written in the Commission on Justice in Wales Report 2019. So.
Yeah, what we have here, Gail, it's a multi-billion-pound industry,
yes,
and our kids are being used for profit. And what Propel wants to do and will do is put an end to this. But we can only do it with help from you guys out there.
Yes.
I think the comments are flying in thick and fast. I think we could probably stay here till midnight, Gail, and have loads of comments flying in still. I mean, this every time I broadcast about children's services, there's a massive response, and we must do something about it. So you guys out there watching, help us help you. Okay,
yes.
Help us help families in Wales. We need Propel in power. We need Propel politicians elected. Okay, and there's a Wales out there to change, and that's what we want to do. Wales does need champions, and we want our Propel candidates to be champions out there. We want Gail John elected as the Police and Crime Commissioner for South Wales, because I know Gail would get in and start kicking some ass, actually, which is needed. And as I said earlier, I think the Chief Constable should be sacked, to be honest. I mean, he's far too politicised, and clearly there's not a great deal of interest in children's services there, in my view. Okay, should we call a night there now, Gail? Do you think?
Okay, thank you. But please join some of the support groups.
Yeah.
Don't be on your own, because it's. I mean, was it? I think a couple of nights ago, I had this guy, who said he was going to just end it. And it's horrific. Yeah. It's horrific what you're going through. So please join support groups and don't be on your own.
We set up PEN, Public Inquiry now. That's a closed group. It's a really good support group. It does meet regularly, and what I would say, just to move away from the politics now, and what Gail was talking about, the parents thinking of ending their lives. What I'd say to every parent out there who is going through trauma and may not be seeing their child and is desperate, you may feel hopeless. You may feel that there's nothing left to live for. You may feel totally bereft. And what I would say to you is, never ever stop believing that you will succeed. If you keep at it, you will succeed. There is always light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, sometimes you just can't see it, but it's there. And I'll leave you on this. I'm not going to mention any names, but it's about never giving up. And there was somebody who lost their baby not long after birth, and very recently, decades later, they found each other decades later. So I mean, and that was through people in the group, Gail, as well. That was one individual in the support group who helped out there. So no matter how tough it is, never ever give up, because there's always light at the end of the tunnel. If you keep at it, if you don't give up on your children, okay, they if you can't find them, one day they will find you, and they will love you for never giving up.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, there's, you have to believe that there is hope. You cannot, your children, they need you. They need you, and you just got to keep fighting. You have to keep standing. You just got to keep looking for the strength, really. Just keep, make sure you go to sleep. Make sure you drink, eat properly. I mean, it is horrendous. It's absolutely horrendous. And, you can't tell someone to process trauma, because I know you can't actually process or come to terms with what's been done to you until you get reconciled with your children. But you've got to keep believing that that day will actually come, so please don't you got to keep holding on to hope, like Neela said.
And also, just finally, now what Gail said there about looking after yourselves, people, because if you're going to be looking after your children or looking out for your children, they may not be living with you, they may not be with you, but you need to keep yourselves healthy and fit as well, because to help your kids, you've got to be in the right place. So I think when you're in pain, it's quite natural to maybe seek more pain sometimes, but we need to process trauma. How we do, however we do it, and ruining ourselves is not the way to do it. So I think we'll call a night here now. So everyone out there, look after yourselves, never give up fighting, vote for Propel, tell your family to vote Propel, your friends, your neighbours, because we're at the start of a political journey here. Okay, we're just at the very beginning.
Could I just give some people some resources though before they go? Then regarding trauma, because you mentioned trauma, and then there's been a lot of comments then about bereavements, like someone has died. That's you're grieving someone who's alive, about future. There's so many comments. So here are some resources for you. There's a guy called Bessel van der Kolk. Now, he wrote a book in 2014, which is called The Body Keeps Us Go. Now, I ended up reading this book, and then after I read it, I realized there's loads of resources on YouTube. Okay, so if you'd like to go onto YouTube, go and have a look at some of the stuff that he said. It's an amazing book. There's loads of ideas there on how to self-regulate, because with trauma, what tends to happen, it affects your eating, it affects your sleeping, it affects your speaking, it affects your everything. Okay, so there's some resources out there. There's another guy called I can't think his name is Gabor Mate, Mate, with a little hat on the end. He's a really good guy as well. So just have a look for some solutions with trauma, just to help you to self-regulate. But those are a couple of resources. There's tons on the internet. Just hook up with some of the solutions, or just some things that can actually help you to just sort of just to try and process a little bit of what's been done to you. And that's what I'm going to leave you with. Yeah, post-traumatic stress, never the same. I know it affects you. There is such a thing which is called post-traumatic growth. Now, it doesn't say that you'll be the same, you'll never be the same again. The experiences like this affect you, but what we're saying is that there's a way of actually looking, bringing hope into your journey, where you can use it to strengthen you. And then it's just trauma, torture. I'm just reading all these comments. Just seek out ways to help you to emotionally regulate some of the things that have been happening to you without, I don't know, it's just really hard, Neil.
It's
really hard.
I mean, I don't think there's anything more difficult to go through, really, hardly. Than I mean, we see so many traumatized people. 275 shares now, people. So well done on sharing. Share this as widely as you possibly can. And but I'm going to say we're in there fighting.
Yeah.
And support Propel. We will change. We will change things in Wales. Lend
Yeah.
us your support. Lend us the authority to do so.
Yeah.
Because we're up for it. We're up for it. We want to do it.
Some people have just started putting resources in the chat box. Can I say thank you to everyone? If you've got any resources that people can use to help them with their trauma, please start putting it in the chat box, because this can actually be a way to support people. So, you know, thank you. Keep putting the resources in, you know, because we need, there's nothing out there. And, you know, we need you to be putting some things in that can help some of these parents who are desperate.
Yeah. So there's one there, against all odds.wales. Okay, support group. Against all odds.wales. So take a look at the comments. There are support groups in there. And if you like what you're hearing, join Propel and vote for us on May the 6th.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Diolch yn fawr.